listeners to another fabulous episode of Manhood Academy Debates. Here we have with us Jeremy, ready to challenge Professor on whether or not homosexuality can form functional relationships. And I'm your moderator, Death by Excuse. Jeremy, I'm sure you've listened to our other debates. We will record the audio portion. This debate is being recorded. We will only show the audio portion. The audio voices will be distorted, and we will not show the video. Do you consent to be recorded for this debate?
Yes, I consent.
And Professor's recording it, so he already has consent. All right.
Technically, he didn't ask me, so I can withdraw consent at any time because I don't think anybody asked.
Yeah, but you're the one posting it though.
That you have a point there. Touche.
Okay, Jeremy, you have the floor, man.
I concede.
Tell us your contentions.
Well, first I just want to get clarification on why is that? Do I have your view correct that Professor feels that homosexual relationships have the incapacity to be functional?
Yes.
And can you go ahead and
okay.
expand on that?
Well, okay. So you want me to elaborate on that first? Okay. When we use the word function, we mean the thing that it's intended for, the purpose. So, for example, if I say, "What's the function of a screwdriver?" It's to screw in screws. It's designed a certain way. It has a head. It's a shape. So its design tells us what its function is. If I have a car, it's obviously designed to drive on the road. It has its shape, its design tells us exactly what its function is. And if it isn't doing that, it's dysfunctional. It's useless. For example, you can use a car as a paperweight. If your papers are blowing away, you could take your car and roll your tire over it, and those papers will stay. Similarly, you could also use a screwdriver as a back scratcher. If you have an itch, you don't have your back scratcher, you can take a screwdriver and scratch your back with it. So you could do more things with something, with any object, even with people, then they are, you can go beyond the function, but it is not the function of the object, of the intention of the object. And you'll know this because eventually, with dysfunctional things, with dysfunctional ideas, dysfunctional uses, there's a breakdown somewhere. So, for example, obviously there's going to be problems if you roll your car onto a piece of paper as a paperweight. Paper gets dirty, it can rip, you're going to waste gas, you're going to waste time. So there's whatever dysfunction, there's always some kind of opportunity cost or some kind of payment that you wouldn't have if you were using the object, thing, person in its intended purpose, its intended function, the way it was designed to be used. Similarly, with homosexuality, you have two people who are not operating according to their design. So, for example, we all know men produce sperm. Point of having sperm is so you can impregnate an egg, and you need the sperm in the egg. Obviously, two men can't impregnate each other, so they can't fulfill the purpose of that thing. So, let's say, we could say maybe...
Is that the purpose of a relationship, though? Is that just to procreate?
No, that's not just the purpose, but let's say, well, a coffee mug. I'm trying to think of something that's multi-purpose. Okay, like a Swiss Army knife. A Swiss Army knife has, a saw, a knife, a toothpick. So it may have 3 or 4 functions. But still, we can abuse the function even though it has multiple functions. Just like men, they can do multiple things. You could speak. You have a voice box to form words, so you could speak. There's a function of speaking. We have the capacity to love. We have the capacity to have sex, to reproduce. We have the capacity to think, to build things with our hands. We can walk with our legs. We can travel, transportation. So we have multiple functions, but ultimately all these functions serve a purpose. Again, it goes back to design. So design determines everything. You don't have anything in existence that doesn't have a design. Your t-shirt, the walls in your house, everything has a specific function that's dictated by how it was designed. Human males have a specific sex organ. We're not going to get into, unless you want to, we can get into all the arguments. I'm just covering an instance. Yes, you could have a relationship, relate to people. You could have an abnormal relationship with animals, with other men, etc. But I'm looking at it from a design point of view. If you have a penis and another male has a penis, you obviously can't mate. It violates the design, the principle of the design. So it's dysfunctional just by the nature of the design of what its intended function is for.
And by intended function, you mean procreate?
Yes, a penis, its purpose is to go into a vagina. It's intended for a vagina. It's not intended for another penis. You have sperm. Nothing's going to happen. But if you put the penis in a vagina, obviously that leads to a baby, or you can't impregnate, sperm can be released into the egg, etc. It's biology. So there is an intention. That's why a woman has a vagina, to accommodate the penis. There is a fit. When something is used for its intended purpose, like a hammer, there is a fit. When you're hammering nails, that's what there's a certain benefit from using it the correct function. You could use a hammer to cut a cake, but you're going to have all kinds of problems, all kinds of crumbs that you wouldn't get if you used a knife. Again, we're looking at design and function.
But you can't use a hammer as a weapon, that wouldn't be...
You could. You're right. You could. You could use a hammer as a back scratch. You could use a hammer as a toothbrush. You could use it for different things.
Well,
but it is not what its intended purpose is for. That's why we have a toothbrush invented. Because the function tells us something about what we're trying to accomplish. So, for example, the hammer, it's heavy, it's metal. If we try to brush our teeth, we could use it as a toothbrush, but it's going to damage our teeth. It's going to damage our enamel. So then we say, well, we got to clean our teeth. The hammer isn't doing a good job. It's too heavy. It's a strain to use. It's got to be used as a repetitive motion. It's going to damage our teeth when we put metal in contact with it. What would be a better design so that we can accomplish that function? And you come with soft bristles, plastic, toothbrush, etc. And now you have the design of a toothbrush that is lightweight. You can brush your teeth without damaging them. So again, design and function.
I understand exactly what you're saying, and I agree. I just not understanding you seem to bring it back to, so it'd be dysfunctional for a man to, have sex.
Jeremy, can you slow down, please? It's hard to listen to you when you speak so quickly.
All right. So then you would make the claim then that it would be dysfunctional for a man to have anal sex with a woman.
Right. Same thing. Like, you could have anal sex with a woman, but again, dysfunctional because, obviously you can't have a child, just like if two men have anal sex together, they can't have a child, can't procreate. It's an abuse of the function. It's not to say there's no pleasure involved in it. You can't do it. I mean, you can do it, obviously, and there is pleasure derived from it, but it's not functional. Just like I can take a jar of sugar and swallow it. It tastes great, but it's not functional. I'll have a lot of damage from that. My teeth will rot out, there'll be health problems, diabetes, etc. So with every abuse of function, there's a price to pay for it, just like anal sex. I mean, talk to porn actresses. There's prolapse colons. There's greater chance of infection. There's a whole host of problems with anal sex. So it's not that you can't do it. It's that when you divert away from the intended function, there's always problems. I can't eat cardboard. I can't eat grass. I can even eat a shoe. I can eat asphalt. But I'll have problems with my digestive system if I don't eat food, like an apple that's intended for my digestive system. Again, function, design, and the price you pay when you abuse the function.
Right. But it seems like you would agree with the statement that the sole function of sex is to reproduce, and then anything other than reproduce. The sole function
of sex is to reproduce.
Right, and then any other, so anytime you're having sex without procreating, it would be dysfunctional.
Well, there's a pleasure with sex, and when you have sex, you don't always make a baby every time you have sex. Some people, barren, they still have sex, or some people are fertile, and they still have sex and don't have a baby just yet. So the function is there, but there's also benefits you get along with the function. For example, I can eat food, and it sustains my body, but it's also pleasurable. I enjoy eating. It's fun to do. It causes me joy, right? When I'm not eating and I haven't eaten for a long time, I'm angry, I'm starving, I'm grumpy. So it's not that happiness is or just eating the food to sustain me is the sole function. There's also the benefit when the function is filled. Just like when I hammer with a hammer a nail with a hammer instead of a butter knife, I get a benefit from that. It's less rigorous on my hand than if I was using a butter knife. I'd be frustrated. So there's also side issues, side benefits, side effects you want to call it, from using things properly and improperly.
Right, and that's assuming that you're saying procreation or reproducing is a benefit.
Right. Well, we're saying that humans are meant to procreate versus not meant to procreate. I posit that they are meant to procreate, that the human race is trying to continue and not extinguish itself. So right. Yes, I think the having sex is eventually you have the purpose of recreating another human so the species can live on.
But especially as the human race gets up in population, you could argue that there's a necessity to curb that increase in population for so that resources aren't used up. So there's almost a necessity,
right?
To not.
But I would say that would be addressed. I get what you're saying, but I don't think that's like saying Well, another way we could do it is, let's say we have too many people on the planet. We could start shooting people. We could start stabbing people. I mean, there's ways to control population, but there are, again, problems. We create problems. Or instead of, taking all the resources individually, we could teach people how to form relationships. For example, one of the biggest problems that you just mentioned is lack of resources. And one of the primary reasons we have lack of resources is lack of relationships. When you drive a car and you're not in a relationship and all your buddies want a car because they want the autonomy and they want the freedom to drive and go wherever they want and don't want to be tied down to anybody, don't want to be responsible for anybody, they create pollution. They draw resources away from other places where people could benefit from having those resources. People could benefit from having the iron, the coal, the gasoline, the oil, etc. that is put into the car. So same thing for housing. I could say, I want my own house. And my friend over here could say, he wants his own house. So if everybody has their own house and we don't have enough relationships, we abuse the space, the very space we have in our rooms. You're one person living in a house all by yourself. You're abusing the function of the house. The house isn't intended for one person. It's intended for a family or multiple people. So things like that waste more space than, the way you're talking about it. Well, we just need to start, promoting homosexuality or homosexual sex just to curb the population.
Well, I'm not saying like promote it necessarily, but the way I think of it is kind of the same as with abortion. Like it's one of the things that has become accepted now that we don't really need people to be having babies all the time. So it's actually might be better to curb that population growth with homosexual relationships, if nothing else, serve as a function to.
Well, then you're okay. So abortions is one way of controlling population, but then again, there's a lot of problems, especially when you have an environment and a culture where you promote abortion or you make it permissible. You basically say that a man fucking a woman isn't a big deal, and if you want to get an abortion to get rid of the child or curb population or whatever, you can go ahead and do it. We devalue human life. We devalue the point of even having a relationship, and we devalue the coupling that goes along with a relationship. I mean, look at society. Society has a hard-on for romantic comedies, for romance, for guys proposing to girls. If we were to adopt your agenda and say, well, abortions become popular, where would there be any ground for romance at that point? I mean, if I could just simply say, well, I just don't want this kid, abort it, just kill it. Well, if human life is so worthless, and we could devalue it so much, why not just, I got a problem neighbor, why not just shoot him in the face with a shotgun? Where's the, I mean, why even have this concept of romance, where people get worked up? I mean, why are we so in love with this concept of marrying and relationships and romance? Why do women get so swoony when a guy's taking care of a girl and promising her things? Why not just say, look, I'm going to be with you until you get fat or you bore me or the sex isn't good, I'm going to leave you or I'm going to kill you. I mean, why not just be flat out and frank with them, right? It's a way of controlling population. It's a way of a simple way of getting out of a relationship. Do you think women would be okay with that? I mean, even guys wouldn't be okay with that. You're like, I'm with this girl, I'm just gonna dump her, and just because she's out of shape or I just don't like her or she caused me a problem and I could just kill her. Again, when you're so careless with life that way, you also affect other areas. Just like when you abuse the function of something that you created for a specific purpose, you have damaging side effects. Goes back to the simple analogy of the hammer. If I could cut the cake with it, but I destroy the cake with a hammer. It's not intended for that job. A knife is useful for cutting a cake, not a hammer, even though I can do it with a hammer. Just like I can control population through abortion, I can also control it by stabbing people. I can also control it by shooting people. I can also control it by damaging relationships. But then I create a host of other problems.
What I'm trying to get to is that if we go back to just sex in general, you would agree that there's two functions of sex, right?
Two functions of sex.
Right. Well, with procreation and pleasure.
Okay.
I mean, would you agree with that view, or do you have?
I don't necessarily know if I would call them both functions. I mean, it's like saying I eat food, and one of the functions is it sustains my body, and then one of the side effects is I get pleasure while I'm eating. So I don't necessarily know if I would equate eating the food with a function of a pleasure derived from eating the food as a function of the food. It's more like the side effect of fulfilling the function. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm eating the food, so the function of that food would be to sustain me, And then when I'm doing the correct thing, I'm eating the food, it's a pleasurable experience. So it's not necessarily that the point of the food is to give me pleasure, but that when I'm fulfilling the function, there is a pleasurable experience or a pleasurable side effect.
Right, but you're saying that, so sex, but then what would be the function of sex that's not intended to procreate? Like, in other words, just having a condom on when you're making love, with a woman, that would, the intention, you'd be abusing the intent, the function of the sex, because you're not intending on using it for its designed
Right.
purpose.
Well, there's other issues like intimacy. I mean, sex is intimate, and people should be intimate in a relationship. Just like you would hug, you would kiss, you would touch. These are things that go along with a relationship. So, just like, when you have sex in a relationship, it's like talking to your partner. You could just, in theory, you could meet somebody, you guys go eat together, you go do things together, you build a house together, but you just never talk. I mean, in theory, you could do that, but then the relationship would be dysfunctional because you're supposed to converse with somebody. You're supposed to have an exchange. You should be shaping each other. So there should be some interaction going on. And when there is no interaction, it's abnormal. Now, you guys can still call yourselves a couple and be together, but there's obviously a problem. Just like you can, I don't know if I was going to say it that way, but the sex is part of the intimacy, just like I would say talking is part of the intimacy of a relationship. When I'm talking to a girl, when I'm talking even to a friend, if I have a friend, a lot of times when I hang out with a friend, I want to go do something with him. But the point of the friendship is not to do a thing that we have in common. It's the thing we're doing is the pretense around or that spurs us towards a relationship or is just part of the relationship, but it's not the point of the relationship. If I play football with my friend, the point of the relationship is not so I can get another person to play football with. It is so that I can have a relationship, and the pretense is we're playing football. This is just a pretense to get us together, an excuse to get us together, to talk to each other, to interact with each other, even to touch each other, high-five each other, right? Tackle each other. So, same with sex. The point is you can procreate, have a baby, but there's also intimacy. You're kissing her, you're fucking her, you're getting pleasure, you're talking to her. There's also other things involved that have to do with the intimacy of the relationship or with the very function of the relationship.
And I'm just not understand I understand what you're saying with the homosexual, sex is not used how it, what it was designed, how it was designed.
Right.
I don't see how that necessarily, how that makes
look at
dysfunctional in itself.
I would think you're trying to say like two guys or two girls who are in a homosexual relationship can both love each other or both do things together, be stimulated, have stimulating conversations together. But again, it's just like saying I can control population by shooting people, but is it the right thing to do? Is it the functional thing to do?
Right,
obviously not.
The functional thing to do would be to stop the people from ever existing in the first place.
Stop who from existing?
Huh?
Stop who from existing?
The people that would be, because if you're stopping people from, kind of like how we try to do with dogs, with getting them neutered, we're trying to stop the population from getting excessive before it even starts.
Right, but we already have a problem before we even have dogs. Like, a lot of times, there's a bigger problem, a bigger issue before you even get to the next problem, the next issue. For example, cars. Like, a lot of people think, well, we got cars, we got too much traffic, we got congestion, we got pollution, so we got to start with, we got to do more public transportation, or we got to build more roads so we lessen the congestion on the freeway so people can get to work. But I would contend that cars themselves are the problem. We shouldn't even have invented cars, because just like the cell phone, it seems like a convenience, like we've created some technological advancement. I have a cell phone. I can call somebody in the next state, the next country, and have a talk with them, and I'm building a relationship. But what do you see when you go out in society? Do you see people running to rush to talk to each other, to congregate, to form relationships, to get into groups, to have parties together, to talk to each other in groups? No, you see people isolating themselves with this technology. You see people on their phones not talking to you while they're going out with you, while they're supposedly your friend, or even when you're trying to meet somebody, they're on their phone. How can you do it? So this thing that's supposed to be helping us socialize or helping us communicate is actually having the opposite effect. We're getting great things from cars, from buses, right? They take us to faraway places we've never gone to. But by the same token, we're polluting the planet. The planet's just is suffering we're suffering so much from the side effects of all this pollution. Respiratory problems for the next generation, just for the pollution in the air. I mean, look at China. They have so much manufacturing. They take so much pride in it. We're number one in exports and this and that. And everything in America says made in China on it. But look at the condition of China. You go to, you've seen some of the pictures there. You can't even see the fucking sky because there's so much gunk in the air. I mean, how healthy is that to breathe? How many health problems does that create? What's the cost of being number one in exports to the USA or making all the products for the United States? What's the cost to your life, to the quality of your life, if you have to see a gray haze every day and you have to put a mask on to walk around and you have lung problems just because of you wanting to advance the technology? Same with cars. Want to advance the technology, creating a problem. With every convenience we have, we create this problem. So you could say down the line, oh, well, if we just change this issue, then we won't have that problem. But we got to look at the origin first. We got to make sure the origin is correct. Look there's a Leaning Tower of Pisa right now in, where is it, Italy? I'm not sure exactly where it's at. But it's not built correct. The foundation of the building's not correct. It's sinking in the mud, so it's at an angle. Now, you could take ropes and pull it from the other side, right? And say, well, we've solved the problem. We've taken the ropes and we're pulling the building on the other side so it's stabilized. But I would contend you shouldn't have built the fucking building there in the first place because the foundation, they didn't take the proper geological survey. The dirt is soft. That won't hold the weight of that type of building. It shouldn't be built there, period. Or they should have stabilized the foundation before they even started. Now, we have the building built and it's leaning, but instead of solving the real problem, which is don't build it there in the first place, or make sure this foundation is solid before you start building something, we're thinking of how we can fix the problem by creating another problem or another kind of jerry-rigging a solution that kind of solves the leaning problem, but doesn't address where it's built.
Right. So I mean, as you know, there's dysfunction all over the world as we come into it. So that's going to be something you always have to deal with. Like, you can't just. Well, how would you? There's still a functional way to address situations, even though they're in dysfunctional situations.
Well, you're basically saying let's build a better cough syrup, whereas I'm saying instead let's solve the cancer so we won't have the cough in the first place. You're talking about dysfunction as, well, we're just always going to have dysfunction, so let's just build a Band-Aid fix in the meantime. We have cracks in the dam, we're always going to have cracks in the dam. Let's just get more people to stick our fingers in the holes in the dam so we can plug it up and we won't have any leaks. Whereas my contention is, if we built the dam correctly in the first place, we wouldn't have to run around, rigging all these, handyman solutions that aren't addressing the real problem.
I know, but now that the dam's built and it's leaking, what's the most functional way to address that situation now?
Well, again, I would say the same solution. Build the dam properly in the first place. I mean, they built it once before, right? So why go around sticking your finger in the dam when you could just...
Scratch.
I'm sorry?
So you would say the most functional way to address a situation like that would be to start over from scratch?
I'll give you a perfect example. Okay, car industry. People always say, cars causing pollution. And then there's my side, which is, well, we shouldn't have cars around. We should have natural transportation and have communities that actually know each other and care about each other so that they should stay in the area and want to get to know the people around them versus just, saying that transportation is the greatest thing and not looking at how it's damaging the community. So I would say that is my position. Now, there are other people who would say, well, if we get rid of the car industry, obviously people are going to be hurting for jobs. You're going to put people out of work. People are going to be starving. Same thing with single mothers. People say if single mothers have babies, the government should subsidize their baby making factories and just give them free money. My position is, fuck that. Don't give them any money. Let them starve. Now you'd say, oh, that's cruel. You can't let people starve. What about the children? I mean, won't the children be affected? Just like similarly, if we shut down all the car factories, won't people working at the car plants be affected? Yes, they will. Detrimentally. As they should. Just like with single mothers, having babies they shouldn't be having by themselves. If you don't give them money, yes, they will be affected in an adverse way, as well as their children who had no say in the matter. They're innocent, so to speak, in that they didn't have a decision to be born, but they will suffer because the single mother put them in the position in the first place to suffer. We shouldn't blame the government for not handing them the money. We should blame the single mother for putting the child in the precarious position in the first place. Similarly, we shouldn't say, we're going to put people out of work if we shut down the car plants. We should say, we're trying to help people around the earth. We're trying to help people have a better quality of life so they don't have to suffer all these side effects of pollution, of cancers from petroleum products, etc., in the manufacturing of cars. We're trying to help people's life. We're trying to improve the quality of life, not have a short-term solution just so you can feed your family for that one day. We're concerned with the future of the entire human race, not just you and your family having a meal. There will be hardships. There will be hard decisions. Just like if I use a hammer to cut a cake, the cake will be fucked up. Now, should we just say, well, we gotta put thousands of dollars into rebuilding that cake, and or do we figure out that we shouldn't use a hammer with a cake? We should use a knife. We should use something that's functional, and we should do things in a functional way so we don't have these long-term repercussions. We don't become latched into these industries that we shouldn't even have. Just like, for example, stripping, porn. I mean, it's $1 billion industries. Everybody's into it. Imagine if we just said no porn today. You'd affect thousands of lives. But consider how porn right now is damaging the very fabric of relationships of society, of guys. They're jerking off every day when they should be fucking a woman. They should be getting into relationships, but they're jerking off to porn. This is creating all kinds of problems. Now, we would say, well, if we got rid of porn, we put people out of jobs. But again, we have to look at the big picture, not just the little problem that we're going to create by trying to address the root problem.
Right. Which in that case would be the whole, men having an outlet for suffering from the feminist movement. But I think you pointed it out in your...
Right, okay, so we could say porn is an outlet for suffering when women are behaving like bitches and trying to control relationships, and they don't know what the fuck they're doing. So they're creating problems for guys, and guys can't get their sexual need met. So in the meantime, why not porn? But I would say, why tolerate feminism? Why tolerate the very thing that's causing the need for porn? Why tolerate the very thing that's causing the need to go to strip clubs? Why tolerate the very thing that's causing the need for these guys to get sucked into these positions where they shouldn't be in the first place?
Right, I agree with everything right there. So,
So I'm saying the same thing. I'm saying the same thing applies to homosexuality. Yes, you can get side benefits from it, but again, design-wise, it doesn't make sense. Just like the principle of the design. Whenever you abuse the design, the function of something, there's going to be a price to pay, and it's not going to be a good price over time.
I'm not seeing the dysfunction caused by.
Well, just like, how would you say? Okay, you could make the same case as I'm smoking a cigarette. I just blow smoke in the air. Who's hurt? Seems perfectly fine to me. It's not one cigarette, though. It's a cumulative effect of billions of cigarettes over a long period of time that causes a culture of problems. It's not just one drink. It's an alcoholic generation. It's a binge drinking generation over a long period of time that causes problems. It's not just fucking one hoe, just one guy fucking a chick and then just leaving. It's a generation of men fucking hoes, being irresponsible, creating single mothers, and then you have a whole generation of emasculated guys perpetuating feminism. They're the engine behind feminism now. That is fucking themselves over, is fucking men over in general. So, yeah, sure, it's just one thing, just one homosexual couple, just look like they're in love and making out, no problem. But it's the huge cumulative effect that eventually you will see the problem manifest itself. And once it's that big and that generational, it's very hard to undo the damage. And it's very hard to just say, show me the problem. Show me it. We have to be smart. We have to look at the principle of function. When we see a design is being violated, its function is being violated, there's a detrimental result. That's all we need to know. From small scale hammer to grand scale smoking, cigarettes, homosexuality, whatever's a dysfunctional use of something. We just look at the principle. We don't need to look at every individual case. If we wait around for each individual case, we'd be dead. If we wait around for the cumulative effects to happen, we'd be beyond repair. Just like with the cars, we're beyond repair now. How can we foresee it just creating the car? We thought, oh, it's great. It's a great invention. We get to go from point A to point B 100 times faster. How can that be wrong? Well, look at cities now. They're designed around cars. They're designed. You consider this? Cities, places where you live, are designed around an invention that wasn't always there. The roads, traffic, ticketing people on the road, how the city generates its income. It's all designed around an invention that was never there the whole time. It just came into, we just made this invention, and we accommodated, all society has to accommodate the problem. But how are you going to see that if you're just there on the first day of the creation of the car? You say, oh, look, it's a car. Looks cool. Great. Do it. Well, if you're not smart and you don't look at the principle behind the behavior, it's very easy to be fooled. It's very easy to glamorize.
Doesn't mean cars are inherently dysfunctional, though.
I would argue they are.
Do you drive?
Yes.
So, you don't mind
I do mind. I wish I didn't have a car. I wish I didn't have to drive. That's what I'm saying.
You don't have to drive, though.
Well, I have to get to work. Again, we've designed society around the problem. We've accommodated the problem, and we've made it near impossible to undo the damage of the problem. You realize jobs now, we have jobs out of the city because of transportation. We can do that now. I mean, when we create a problem, we create 1,000 other little problems that reinforce the problem.
My point is that it's hard to just, stop, even if we know something's dysfunctional, it's hard just to stop right in the middle of it and try to...
You're right. It is very difficult. That's why it's very difficult to be responsible. But you can see the problem is much worse when you're irresponsible. It's much easier to be irresponsible than responsible, but the cost is always greater. If somebody's smart and they look at the cost, see, it's always greater. It's always going downhill.
So if you have a family, like, say you say you need to drive in order to get to work, in order to make money,
right?
Are you being more functional by actually, driving? And
there's no more functional.
Not having my bad, that was a bad choice of words. I understand that, but I mean, but you're saying that. Are
you saying there's less damage?
Yeah, there's less damage by you not losing your job, by having to walk there and not being on time and getting fired, and more causing.
No, because I would say there's more damage that's caused in the long run. For example, you have a job you can get to through transportation. Well, now you're embedding health problems. I mean, I fucking can't tell you how many things I'm reading about the planet going down the toilet, global warming, animals going extinct, pollution, anything you can think of. It's just getting worse and worse. It's not getting better over time. The reason why I don't want to do anything about it is because we haven't had to reap the consequence yet. The consequence isn't immediate, so we think there is no consequence. That's the danger of these grand scale dysfunctional activities, dysfunctional events. It's grand scale and it's gradual over time. It just gets worse and worse. So you just get used to it. People are used to it now. I mean, think of it. People who grow up now, they think porn is that's just part of society. It's just the way it is. I was born into porn. Porn is just a normal thing. I mean, think of that. You just look at what porn is. A chick getting fucked on film, and then you pay to jerk off to it. I mean, if you just look at it, you go, what? But that's normal now. That's normal now. We make jokes about it. It's no big deal. Same with strip clubs. That's the car. That's exactly what the car is. It's like, come on, bro. I grew up driving a car. I learned on a stick shift. It's just part of life. Driving a car, right? They romanticize it. It's part of films. You see a film, you go, oh, that dude is driving that car. It's so fucking cool. I want to get that car. Oh, I see James Dean, Rebel Out of the Cause. He has the badass car. I want to get that car. I want to have that feel to it. We've romanticized things. It's the same thing that advertising does. When you want to sell a damaging idea or a product, you turn to the smoking industry. You got a cowboy. What's more sexier than a cowboy getting a cigarette while he's got, a dirty guy, rough and tumble. He's a real man's man. He's smoking a cigarette. Well, now you've embedded the problem. We have a culture that just embeds the problem. So over time, it just gets worse. It doesn't get better. You have a job right now, great. You have transportation right now, great. All these conveniences right now, great. Well, if everything's so convenient and so great, why do we have Elliot Rodger? Why do we have John Holmes? Why do we have people trying to rip apart society if society's so great, if technology's so great? Because people are becoming more isolated. They're becoming more neurotic. They're becoming more dysfunctional, forming relationships. They don't even know how to. They don't know how to talk to people. And they reinforce the problem with the help of psychologists and psychiatrists who offer bullshit diagnoses like you have Asperger's, you're an Aspie, you're autistic. Some people, they just hear things on the news and think, I either have Asperger's or I'm autistic. As if those are just valid diagnoses. These are the problem. I have ADD, I have ADHD. I mean,
so if we get back to the root, so what would you recommend, or how would you say, to a gay or lesbian person, just how do they start being functional in their relationships with other people, with anybody? If at the core they're gay or lesbian.
Look, there's a lot of problems. I mean, just the same way with alcoholism. There's a lot of problems. How would I say, what would I say to alcoholics? I wouldn't say what people told me. Number one, people always tell me, stop drinking, stop smoking, which is just as bad as saying, you two gay guys, stop having sex. You two lesbians, stop having sex. I would never do that. Number one thing, that's the hardest thing to do, is to tell people what to do. So I'd always tell people, look, the reason why we have these abnormal situations in the first place is because we're not socializing in a functional manner. It creates all kinds of problems when you don't know how to socialize in a functional manner. When you can't form a relationship, that has repercussions later on down the line. Not only to your immediate family, but the people who are raised under you who don't have social skills, they damage society. They are detrimental to society. I mean, people grow up and they can't get their sexual needs met. People grow up, they're isolated from people. They don't interact normally with people. They cause damage to society. They're frustrated men. They're angry men. They're delusional men. I mean, they behave in delusional ways. They do damaging things to society. And not only that, to themselves. So there's all these other repercussions. So I would go back to the basics is what we do here at the Academy is I tell people what to do. I tell them how to socialize properly so they can get the things they want. They can get what they're trying to get from another human being, which is to form a relationship with them. And when they start forming a functional relationship, then all the other problems solve themselves. So, for example, you're a smoker, let's just say. I would never go up to you and go, hey, stop smoking. Smoking's bad for you. As a smoker, you probably heard a fucking billion commercials about how bad smoking is for you. I would never just say, right off the bat, just, hey, stop smoking. You probably already know that. I don't need to tell you that. But what I would do is I would teach you how to form a functional relationship so you wouldn't have a reason to smoke. The reason why people smoke is they're nervous. They're anxious. They deal with stress. That's because they don't know how to deal with people. If they knew how to deal with people, they wouldn't even feel the stress that drives them to get the cigarette in the first place. I'm dealing with the root problem, not just the symptom of that problem, which is the smoking.
So you're saying being gay or lesbian is a symptom of...
Yes, because there are certain things. I don't know necessarily about the biological aspect, because there's certain camps that say it's, when you're born that way, and others you see there's damage in their relationships growing up. I mean, we have guys here who are very emasculated, and they almost feel gay or they act gay, but when they are trained socially how to get things out of a relationship, how to speak up for themselves, they have a different response, not just sexually, but how they relate to people is determined or is changed by how they're trained to socialize. I mean, you hear a lot of guys that talk like this, and they're very effeminate, and you wonder, is that just them? Were they just born that way? Or do they not also have problems in other areas where they can't get things they want because they don't know how to socialize? They don't know how to speak up for themselves. They don't know how to put a period at the end of their sentence when they speak. They're always asking permission to speak in their body language and their attitude and so forth. So we teach them how to do things functionally, and then as a result, we see their life change. I mean, there's a guy here who has digestive problems. I didn't say go see a dietary specialist. I didn't say go wear a Depends undergarment. I told him learn how to socialize first. Then we'll worry about the symptoms of poor socialization afterwards. So there are
is your book and your principles lost on homosexuals aren't able to use them, like the principles at all?
I wouldn't say that at all. I would say this. Look, whether you're gay or straight, learn how to socialize first. Don't worry about whether you're gay or not. Just worry about learning how to socialize correctly first. Then if you can pull that off, then we'll worry about that issue. So, because again, I don't know necessarily, because I haven't done so much research into why people behave gay or are gay, but all I know is that when people are taught to socialize functionally, you have different outcomes socially. I mean, it's the same thing with women. Look at women, people say, oh, some girls have told me, I'm gay or I'm bi. They're not gay and bi. I mean, sometimes it's just like the woman has never met a man who's put her in check because society doesn't support putting a woman in check. And she has been taught by her dad and her mom to always take charge and to stick up for herself. And as a result, she has miserable relationships. So then she thinks, well, maybe I'm just gay. Maybe I'm bi, etc. So with poor socialization, change of sexuality. Is she really gay? No. So I'm not too worried about what they're doing. I'm more focused on, are they socializing properly? Then we'll let the chips fall where they may.
Okay. So, I don't know what to say right now.
We're on the gay issue. We covered a lot of things, but we came full circle. We're back to gays being homosexuality being dysfunctional.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think it's right to say that in and of itself it's dysfunctional to a point where I think what's important is in having a functional relationship. Well, from what I learned by reading the book, as long as the gender roles are functioning and fulfilled, then you can have a functioning relationship.
Well, sure, like I just told you.
The role of the man, if someone takes the role of the gender role of the female, you can have the two functioning, whether it be two girls or more, whether it could be two men and two girls, they can still, as long as one of them fulfills the role of exercising authority for changing, bringing their lives towards order, and the other one's respecting that authority, then you can have a functional relationship.
I don't think so. Just for the reason I already spoke about before. I already told you. Look, I can have like 5 smokers out there saying smoking's the greatest thing. It calms my nerves. It's awesome. I get to socialize while I'm smoking. Therefore, smoking's good. You could tell me all the 20 reasons that we're a gay couple. We adopted a kid. We're helping the kid out. Therefore, gays are functional. We help the kid out. It's not to say that you can't benefit society by doing something dysfunctional, but ultimately you're creating more problems than you're solving. ultimately, again, like I just told you, we got to look at the principle, not just the immediate outcome. Just like I said, what if I was smoking a cigarette and a chick said, "Oh, that guy smokes, he's hot," and then I got in a relationship with her? Would I just go around and say, "Well, I was smoking, therefore smoking's good. It causes relationships. Girls come up to you and want to talk to you, and it's a pretense to talk to girls. Therefore, you should smoke." I mean, maybe in the short term that would be great, but in the long term, I'd create a whole lot of fucking problems, like I just already mentioned.
But you could argue that a heterosexual relationship, oh, great, okay, we're together, we're having some kids, we're having 5 kids, and if everybody does that, then, the earth is overpopulated, there's no more resources to go around, and we're fighting over resources and having wars. So there's problems from a heterosexual couple having kids, like...
Yeah, but I don't think we've extrapolated that far.
But we're getting there.
Well, look we could say then, what are we going to say then,
Because you can't...
Are we going to say, don't have 40 kids, even though you have the capacity to have 40 kids, if you can't take care of 40 kids?
Well, that's exactly my point. You're saying that, somewhere down the line, you're saying even though you don't know the problem right now, a homosexual relationship will cause problems down the line.
Yes.
And you don't really know that. What problems are you, like...
I just told you it's a principle. Look at, I can cut a cake with a hammer. I don't know what kind of problems that's going to create down the line, but I know when I'm abusing the function of something that has an intended function, there's going to be a price to pay for that, for the abuse of that function.
The function of a relationship is to have kids, because that's the only thing that you're missing from a homosexual couple.
What? I'm sorry, what?
The only function that a homosexual couple does not, fulfill is the ability to. They also damage the social fabric of the nature of relationships and how people relate. I mean, there's just so many things to go into. There's so many ways that, not just teaching about relationships and how kids are damaged in how they behave and what type of boundaries there are. It's almost like saying, look, if I just say bestiality is fine or pedophilia is fine, and kids grow up into that atmosphere, I mean, the way they look at animals, the way they deal with children is going to change just by the nature of what society permits. Just like if porn is okay, well, kids will damage themselves at an earlier age. It's just part of society. I was 13 when I first looked at porn, and now the next generation, they're 5. They get in kindergarten. They get a packet with, they go home, the teacher gives them a packet of porn to study up on. Well, just part of society. Do we just say, well... I heard you use that bestiality and pedophilia analogy in another discussion where you're talking about, stopping it at, and stopping it arbitrarily, why not just stop it here? But I don't think there's nothing arbitrary about stopping it within the, saying that sex is okay between 2 people in between 2 people, humans, that are over 18. That's not arbitrary. Remember that discussion you had?
No, I'm not.
And I think it was about you guys were talking about no means no with the rape. And you said that, some about ending what's okay, arbitrarily, like, if you say homosexuality relationships are not, okay, then why not with an animal? Why not with kids? Why not?
All right. Okay.
But I don't think it's not arbitrary to stop it right there and saying, at 2 humans.
I mean, why not? I mean, if I'm abusing the function of relationships, why not? I mean, I could just say, well, you're discriminating against animals, or you're discriminating against ages. Why can't children have sex with adults? Why can't people have sex with animals? What if they like it? I mean, you make so many arguments and justifications for it. If you really want to do something, you can make a lot of justifications for it. People do that already.
It's not.
I mean, you got NAMBLA, North American Man-Boy Lovers Association. They say, kids need adult love. It's a natural, normal thing. You could justify any kind of dysfunctional behavior. Just like homosexuals do. Oh, it's natural, normal. They say, monkeys are gay. I mean, they project all kinds of nonsense onto nature.
But you don't think there's anything to the fact that there's a function, there's a necessity or eventually you may say that there may be down the line a necessity to control the population. You don't buy that.
I wouldn't. Again, I already covered that. I don't want to cover it again. You could control the population any number of ways. I could control it with a nuclear bomb. But is it functional? What will it do for society in the long run? So if I'm going to control population, I'm going to make sure I'm doing it and I'm not violating the law of function, but when I'm doing something. I could, but I wouldn't do it. Again, you can do it. I'm just telling you. I'm concerned with the principle because I'm smart enough to know that the principle, if you violate a principle, there's a grave price to pay down the line. You can do it, but you're going to cause other problems, just like I've already demonstrated, I think.
Okay, well then let's get into more about, say, given a homosexual relationship, why aren't they able to meet all the other things that you know, as far as fulfilling function, as long as the gender roles are both.
I just covered that. I mean, look, I can't foresee all the effects that they're going to have on society, what the future is going to hold. I just told you, I focus on the principle. If there's a violation of a principle, I don't care if it's homosexuality or building a house. When you violate a principle, you're going to have trouble. There's going to be a price to pay. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm not a fortune teller. I could fantasize about situations, and I could come up with situations. I could, imagine situations, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily going to happen, or they will happen that way. That's just speculation.
So how do you...
Just like I told you, if it violates a principle, there's going to be a problem. I've learned that from a lot of other things in life. It's no different than any other principle.
But problems arise even when you don't violate principles, though.
Okay, that's according to you. I don't believe that, but if you want to believe that, that's fine.
Or just even if you live a healthy life and you don't, because...
Your assumption is that you're living a healthy life. You're just throwing these things out there like it's just the premise. I don't even believe the premise you're giving me. I don't think you would properly examine the premise of what you're saying. It's just like saying, this person was innocent. Well, first of all, you got to know what innocent is. The same with I'm living a healthy life. Well, that's just you're just throwing it out there like the assumption is taken for granted. Like, yeah, it's healthy. How do I know? I don't know. I'd have to examine it. And according to your examination, I wouldn't trust it.
So what? So is there such a thing as so what? So you're saying that there's a way to figure out every time a principle is violated.
Every time that a principle is violated. Well, as much as we know of a principle, we shouldn't violate it, like a design principle. We could see there's a violation of a design principle, of an intention. We know there's a problem. Obviously, we know through biology there's a violation of a design principle there. Two men are just not intended to have children, so we know there's a violation of the design principle. That's all I need to know at that point. I don't need to go into morality. I don't need to talk about the Bible. I don't need to talk about I don't know, whatever angle you want to cover it at. All I just have to look at is it violating the design principle? Yes. Biologically, yes. That's it. Now you can make all kinds of other arguments, but once it violates the principle of that design, it's done already. I mean, you can make all the arguments under the sun. I don't care. As long as once it violates that principle, it's done.
I understand what you're saying. I do agree with that. It does, you can say that it violates the design principle, but sometimes things change and what it might have been.
Okay, well now you're saying principles don't matter. If things change and principles don't matter. Then principles aren't as solid as we thought. I disagree. I think principles are the most solid things around, and people who don't depend on principles and absolutes, people who are, part of this relativist generation and think, everything just is individual, it changes according to who you are, they're fooling themselves, and they're in for a wake-up call later on down the line when they realize principles rule everything. Principles govern the universe. The universe wouldn't be here without principles. Unless you have any new arguments, I'm ready to rest. Do you have anything else? Because it sounds like we're going around now in circles.
All right. Yeah, no, is it all right if I just get your take on a couple of other things? Because I really enjoyed the ebook and what it's taught and the principles. I agree with you on a lot of stuff.
Are you asking me questions or are we still debating?
That's what I'm saying. You have a few minutes just to kind of just get a little bit your take on a few things.
Are they questions or is it debate? Is this a contention or are you debating me or you just ask me questions? Because we can end the debate here and then ask questions after.
Right. That's what I'm...
Okay, why don't we go around here for the audience and then
let's go to audience reactions. Feelings, your reaction to the debate.
So Jeremy had said something, said that, why can't homosexuality be seen as functional? Because doesn't it control population? So therefore, there is some goodness that comes out of homosexuality. But I don't believe that at all because, you hear homosexual people or just people in general say, why are straight people complaining? Doesn't that mean more women for you? Well, obviously no. There's a whole generation of guys who can't form relationships. So you would think, there's homosexual guys. That means more women for guys. But just because we have a dysfunctional social fabric, there's all kinds of problems. So I don't believe that homosexuality causes better social situation by helping the Earth, the planet, by.
All right, well, another thing I wanted,
Jeremy, you're not going to debate the audience. The audience is just going to give their reaction. We're just going to go. Are you done with your reaction feelings?
Yes.
Sounds like he imploded.
Thank you. Trailer, what's going on? What's your reaction to the video or the debate?
Yeah, Professor covered some of his contentions. Well, mainly the one contention, more from a principal point of view, and I understand what he's saying. And I think he briefly covered some specifics of the problems that having dysfunctional ways like homosexuality, how it affects culture. But I felt like he could have gone a little further into them. For example, I mean, there's even guys in the academy who in the past thought, homosexuality is a valid choice. It's now it's like, you can't get chicks, I'll become gay. So it's like, it's affecting society, and then like, say two guys, now they're gonna adopt a child, the child's not gonna have an experience of a mother, so it's gonna have psychological effects. So I feel Professor could have gone a little further into those effects that we can already start seeing, and can extrapolate with a little thinking of how it's so dysfunctional. And he was mainly going for a principle, which I understand why he does that. He likes to look at things from a principle point of view, but he could have gone a little more into specifics. That's what I thought.
Thank you. Wigger, your reaction. Your mic's muted. Hang on. Okay, go ahead.
I agree with the professor, because when you have two men together, they might enjoy like anal sex or oral sex or all those other things. But when you add pleasure to something, you take away the necessity of like having children. So that's a necessity, because if you don't have children, you don't have people populating each other.
What?
Or you don't have as a species, we're supposed to make more people. So
More people? What?
That's the purpose of we're supposed to procreate as humans.
Yes, okay.
I got that part. I followed that part.
And so, when you, see, gay people adopt, and when they adopt, what it does is it actually, I believe that when you take two people away from their biological parents, since everybody's derived from a man and a woman, you put them with two men, and they don't get the necessary structure from the man and the woman that they would. That they wouldn't get the necessary structure from the two men as they would their mother and their father. All right.
Okay, this reaction isn't making sense. Thank you anyway. Stingray, your reaction.
I got that last part. The first part was murder. I don't know what was going on there.
Well,
my first debate.
okay. I think, Jeremy, what you're trying to tell us is there are good things in homosexual relationships. Like, there's some good there. And I mean, yeah. Why do you think they have them in the first place? Because they need companionship, they need to relieve the sexual tension. But down the line, I think there's going to be problems. And you seem to have a problem with, it's dysfunctional. I don't think it's right to call it dysfunctional. That sounds bad. That sounds mean. Well, it is. I mean, it is bad, but we all enjoy dysfunctional things. But we have to realize that there's problems. Like, I enjoy anal, but I can't have anal all the time because...
Yeah! Dog!
I gotta eat the guy. You know, if she's a slut, I'll get AIDS. So, you gotta be aware of the consequences. It's not like, that's just the facts. I mean, it's not a matter of it being mean or nice. It's just a matter of knowing how things work.
Hey, I agree with Stingray. I enjoy anal too. But, I realize, even not from the enjoyment, but even along with it, I still have to acknowledge it. It's dysfunctional. I'm not trying to, just because I do it, I'm not trying to justify it.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Socrates, your reaction.
Socrates. From Bill and Ted, I like the idea of the principles, and following up on that. What seemed to be being said was the idea of something being of value to you when it's performing its function correctly, when it's being used for its function. So a homosexual relationship can be of value, but it will never be as valuable as a relationship that's based on its true function. And that, to me, that's what seemed to be being said.
Could you elaborate on your reaction to that?
Sure.
You're just pointing out what was said. You're not saying what you think of it.
Oh, I got a little frustrated with it because it seemed to be going a long time to say that amount, that you have a homosexual relationship, it is of value. You have a heterosexual relationship, it is also of value, but because the heterosexual relationship is following what we are designed for, our design and our function, the homosexual relationship will never have the value to us that a heterosexual relationship can have, because it's not following our function. It's not following our design.
Well, thank you. Attention all, your reaction.
I thought this debate was just way too fucking long. I mean, the professor had like a paragraph of things to say, comparing homosexuality to smoking. Yeah, it's nice. It relieves anxiety. Homosexuals, people need companionship. They want to have sex, and it feels good. But it's not overall going to benefit society. It's not going to benefit two people in a relationship. And that was the entire debate, and it took like 30 seconds for me to say and an hour to listen to. It's just, professor, you need to learn how to moderate and not.
Listen, I don't even want to have this debate. To tell you, there are things I debate on that I'm more knowledgeable about. The only thing I'm knowledgeable about is the principle violation here. So I don't think about homosexuality. I don't study it. I don't read studies. I hear both sides arguing. I don't even care about it. All I need to know is once it violates a function, that's it for me. So that's why I don't do a lot of research into it. I wasn't looking for this debate. I don't even want to have this debate. This isn't really a topic I would be willing to debate. I mean, if somebody challenges me, I'll debate it, but I don't even think it's necessary to debate. So I agree with you. I think it was tedious. I think it was long, and I think it was unnecessary.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Why not?
DBE, next time when people, when the professor was having these weird awkward pauses that took 5-10 seconds to get past, just encourage people to move on.
I agree. I agree with that. Move them on.
I agree too. Why not? Your reaction.
I was almost falling asleep at this debate because I thought that this subject should have been covered in between 5 and 10 minutes. I think homosexuality is dysfunctional. Of course it is. I think that homosexuality perpetrates more dysfunction, such as you have couples who are homosexual, and because they're homosexual, maybe there's some type of depression and the fact that perhaps they sense that they're not accepted by society because they're homosexual. So what do they turn to? They turn to drugs, they turn to alcohol, and they perpetrate more dysfunction.
Speculation.
I'm sorry, what?
I think that's speculation.
Professor, that is not speculation.
Well, I think it's speculation.
What do you mean by that?
I think you're taking guesses at that. I don't think it's confirmed.
Well, I'm talking from experience, and
Okay.
I don't have much, but an experience of people that I've met that I've talked to who maybe had homosexual sons or daughters.
I'm not going to argue your experience. I just wish you would qualify that as your experience, because then it makes more sense. And you just tell me the way you told it to me. It sounds like you're kind of trying to guess what the problems are versus saying, "Here's my experience."
Okay, then yes, it is my experience from customers that I've talked to. I sell car insurance, so I meet a lot of people every day, and I have different conversations with them. Some of them that have had homosexual sons do come to me, or they open up about the stuff, how their sons are withdrawn, they're not social, they rather do drugs or stay in their room depressed, maybe injecting themselves with some of the type of drugs, and basically not being with the family, or feeling casted out by society. So I think that, yeah, homosexuality is dysfunctional, but I also understand that men or women will turn to the opposite or the same sex because they don't know how to handle their relationships, and I understand that. I don't demonize them. I'm not like, oh, fuck these guys. I understand it because I come from a place that also I've been deprived of my relationships, so I understand it.
Thank you, Wino. Flappy Bird, your reaction.
I already knew that Professor's position was...
and I also like anal too.
I already knew that Professor's position was that that homosexuality was dysfunctional, so I agree with that position. From this debate, I was hoping for more of an explanation about that, but like he said a couple of minutes ago, it's really not necessary to say anything more than that this is dysfunctional, and that was disappointing for me. I was hoping for something else, something more that I could say about homosexuality, because I like Wino has friends. I also have friends who are homosexual, so I was hoping for something I could say to them other than that it's just dysfunctional, and they shouldn't do it because it's dysfunctional. So that was my reaction.
Thank you. Empty Thread, your reaction.
Hey, I came in here pretty late, so I didn't catch very much of it. What I did catch was, let's see, Jeremy. I don't know if you're nervous or what, but the way you talk is very halting, very stuttering, so it's sometimes hard to understand you. But I think your basic contention was that you don't appreciate people disapproving of homosexuality. Is that right?
I want to say that my point was that to say that's impossible for that type of relationship to be functional. That was what my argument was. That's not impossible for it to.
He's saying it's not dysfunctional.
Okay, well, I agree with what I heard the professor say, which is that there's a very basic principle, which is that men and women belong in relationships with each other. That's the way it's always been. That's how nature designed us. And he says he's not interested in debating it any further because that's when you get two guys together in a romantic relationship or two women, then that breaks that principle. Therefore, down the line, you're going to get some problems. I agree with that, but I also have some strong feelings about this. Regardless of this breaking a principle, in today's context, in the American West anyway, I think it goes beyond that in terms of sickness. Like, there's a lot of guys today for a lot of different reasons that can't, just like what Wino was saying, that don't know how to make relationships with women, don't know how to make relationships with girls. I believe that the vast majority of homosexuality today, particularly male homosexuality, is not a neurological or genetic trait, but rather the result of early trauma in trying to form romantic relationships with girls. And there's no support, no societal cultural support for them to gain the personality characteristics they need, except for Manhood Academy and like this kind of thing. So they take the easy way out. They glom onto this culturally accepted, celebrated homosexuality thing, which is really just a cop-out, I think. That's why I'm disturbed when I see like the celebrating homosexuality shit. There's something sick about it that rubs me the wrong way, and I think it's that it's a culturally sanctioned cop-out for taking on a suitable role as a man.
I like that reaction.
That was a very thoughtful reaction. I like it.
I've spent way too much time thinking about this stuff.
What about the women, though?
What about the women? Thoughts, your reaction?
Well, alright, my reaction, after listening to this debate, I have a much clearer idea of what it means to be functional and how important that is. And I'll give you why I gave you the point that I thought that. When Professor said we can use a hammer to cut a cake, and that would be dysfunctional because it's dysfunctional use of a hammer. And then we started getting onto other arguments. And I started thinking, you could go a billion different ways. You could cut a cake with a chair, cut a cake with a shoe, all kinds of different ways, trying to make maybe even excuses of why that's a good thing to use. But the simple, most direct route is use a knife to cut a cake. And because that's the function of a cake cutter, is to look like a knife. And so that makes things a lot easier to think about. That there's one function for one object, and not a whole bunch of different things that society tries to make us think. Oh, we can use this, we can use that, whatever we want to use, whatever we feel like using. So, it may not sound like it, but I have a clear understanding now of what it means to use things in their functional manner. People, objects, those kinds of things.
Thank you. I'll give my brief reaction. Jeremy, I think you, even though you were stuttering a lot and it was a little hard to listen to you at the beginning, I think you did bring up some good questions, and you actually brought up some criticisms that I had never considered. So I did appreciate that, and I also appreciated, Professor, you were talking about how you were connecting it to principles, everything, all the problems to principles. Because if you just look at it from a surface point, from a surface level, it seems very, very puritanical when you don't justify why, hey, you can choose to be responsible or irresponsible. Being irresponsible seems easier, but you have to pay for it in the long run. So I'm glad that you brought up that point, because so many people, they think of like accountability, they think of responsibility, they see it as just like the sacrifice, and that's it. But in reality, it's actually easier than being irresponsible. It just doesn't seem that way to someone that's undisciplined. So I'm glad you clarified that.
Sweet.
Professor, your last words.
These guys actually made me think of one other point, but I didn't want to bring it up as it was speculation, but I've heard it from people before, is that early childhood trauma, what Empty Threat said, he made me think of what I've heard, that has to do with something of the shaping of your sexuality. For example, if you get molested, or if there's some type of sexual trauma or trauma. And again, you could look at it as biological, or you could say that guys couldn't get their sexual needs met, so they turn to younger audience, teens, children, etc. And when they damage those children, they grow up and repeat the cycle or have a damaged sexuality, whether it leads to homosexuality or pedophilia or, some other aberrant sexual proclivity. I don't know. That's speculation, but I think that has something to do with it. And I don't think that's these types of sexual problems are researched enough. They aren't even investigated because they're very politically incorrect. The investigation, I think, would be censored and shut down because right now we're a very liberal-minded, quote, progressive nation, and we thrive on censorship. We thrive on censoring, telling people the truth, the hard truth, telling them facts that they don't want to hear. So that is definitely part of it, I think. And then also, like I said, we could have handled this in about 2 seconds, but I don't really dwell on this subject as it's not really relevant to me. Once the design principle is violated, it's just not worth it to me to waste my time, to invest in my time, because there's so many things you can invest your time in. So I want to be careful where I'm wasting my time. I mean, there's so many opportunities, even in the academy, to waste your time harping on men's rights issues, false rape accusations, wage inequalities, that type of thing. And you could waste your time not training socially to prevent the problem just by focusing on the symptoms. And I think that's a lot of what people do. Like this guy in the chat room, Roberto, he always fucking posts stupid ass articles about men's rights issues, and he has no idea how to socialize. It's a complete fucking waste of his time. It would just be like if somebody here started dedicating 30 years of their life to research whether homosexuality was, a dysfunctional issue or not. It's a complete and utter waste of time. So that's why I don't invest my time in investigating it or, taking samples of people. How was your childhood affected? What's your childhood like, etc.
Thank you for clarifying that point. Jeremy, your closing words.
Well, and along with my argument, I was just wanting to hear from the professor, like a way for a homosexual to functionally use, the principles taught in the book, or would you just say, don't be homosexual? Is that all you would say to that person, or?
I think I covered that already. I answered that, actually.
Thank you for attending another fabulous episode of Manhood Academy Debates. We'll see you next time.